Welcome everyone to the Wednesday edition of our training camp live stream. Alongside Ryan Wood, I am Olivia Reiner. The Jets have landed at Lambeau Field, not actual Jets, the New York Jets. The Packers began their joint training camp sessions against the Jets today. We will give you the biggest storylines from today's practice in just a moment. However, before we begin, as always, you know the drill. You can be a part of our conversation. If you're over on Facebook or YouTube, leave us a question down in the chat. Ryan and I would love to hear from you, and we'll get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers is known to not really value joint practice sessions. He said following the Packers' 2019 sessions against the Houston Texans that he just didn't get a lot of value out of them. However, this time around was a little bit different against the Jets. Rodgers said today that practices were anything but vanilla. Why did this practice appear to be different for Rodgers and the Packers?
Well, for one thing, John Pagano is not on the New York Jets staff and able to report everything to Chuck Pagano, who, when the Texans came to town 2 years ago, was the case. And Chuck Pagano at the time was the defense coordinator for the Chicago Bears. So there is a lot more comfort level, trust, and obviously familiarity between these two coaching staffs, Matt LaFleur, Mike LaFleur. They're brothers. They're on opposite coaching staffs. Robert Saleh is quite possibly Matt LaFleur's best friend. So there's a not just a camaraderie, really a trust that's built up that, hey, you can show your scheme here. It's not going to get out. And both sides, both teams did show their scheme today. Aaron Rodgers straight up doesn't like these joint practices. No question about that. He got a not really joking around, just kind of being himself, being honest, said that he promised PR guy Tom Fanning that he would not go scorched earth on joint practices in his presser today. And he did not. He said that there's some things that you can learn from, and he likes it. The Jets have a good defensive line. The Packers' offensive line right now, the interior offensive line especially, is struggling. So that was a good look for them. The Jets have a young secondary group, and Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, they took advantage of that. MVS had a great day, took advantage of that, so it was probably good for the Jets DBs. He said, there's certainly there's value here. At the end of the day, he's most happy that there were no fights, and definitively, there were no fights. It got a little testy at times, Olivia, but there were no fights.
Closest fight was you and me, Ryan, going at it on the sideline today at practice. I'm
no,
watching
you kicked my butt. I'm not fighting you. I know better. You kicked my butt.
It was a family affair, as you mentioned, at joint practice today. Head coach Matt LaFleur, his younger brother being the Jets offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, plus one of his dearest friends going back a long time, head coach Robert Saleh, also present at Jets practice today. How do those connections benefit both teams out on the field?
Yeah, I think that for one, it helps everyone chill a little bit. Like hey, we're family here. Like, let's not go and beat on each other. The closest that we saw today, I think, and I'm curious, Olivia, through your set of eyes, what you thought of the intensity. For one, it was awfully odd that they're not doing one-on-ones in offense and defense, but they were doing one-on-ones in special team blocking. Like, that's kind of the same thing. And it was very intense. Both sidelines got pretty hyped. They were amped. No fights, though. No fights. The other thing, too, Jared Davis, knows the Packers well, spent the last 4 seasons in Detroit, first-round pick, new to the Jets, new linebacker with the Jets. He kind of laid out Josiah DeGuara on a pretty hard hit that, hey, if it was a game, it would have been completely legal. There was no cheap shot there. It's just not what you see in practice. And Devontae Adams let him know about it afterward. He followed Jared Davis to the sideline, to the Jets huddle, and was kind of talking to him. Don't know what he said, but kind of guess. And but there was no dust up. I think that the familiarity, the friendships on the coaching staff do help there. The Packers did not know the Texans, Bill O'Brien and his coaching staff very well a couple years ago when they came to town. So it's different. This joint practice was really set up because of those relationships. The Texans was set up because of 2 reasons. One, the Packers are never leaving Green Bay for a training camp practice, and 2, Houston, it's hot in August. They wanted to get out of that southern heat, that South Texas heat. and Green Bay sounded like a good destination. So it was more geographically based 2 years ago. This is much more just the relational part.
It was still quite steamy at practice today, and the intensity was quite hot. And the Packers' offense and defense were on fire in the 2-minute drill. Aaron Rodgers in the ones, he had a successful 2-minute drill connecting with wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling on a deep ball. Then the twos, the second string offense led by quarterback Kurt Benkert, he was also successful, found Equanimeous St. Brown in the end zone about 3 yards out of the goal line. And then the Packers' first string defense as well was able to stop Jets and quarterback Zach Wilson from scoring in the 2-minute drill. So all in all, pretty successful. How valuable is getting that experience, especially going up against a team that you don't know as much about, not your own teammates, in something like the 2-minute drill at this point in the preseason?
Aaron Rodgers was asked about getting that touchdown. He said, it's nice to have, if there's an end zone there, you want to find it, right? Even if it's practice, but it's not a gotta have. It's practice. And he said it wouldn't have been a failure necessarily if they wouldn't have scored there. I thought by and large, Olivia, these two teams looked like a team that on one hand, one team had Aaron Rodgers, reigning MVP at quarterback, and the other team had Zach Wilson, who I think is very talented, number 2 overall pick, but is still a rookie in his first camp. These two teams are in very different stages right now, and it looked like that. The Packers' offense and defense kind of had their way in the competitive drills, and I think that was to be expected.
Mm-hmm. The Packers saw a couple of familiar faces, maybe one more familiar than the other, as they welcomed a couple new additions to their roster, one of them being quarterback Jake Dolegala, who is now in the Packers quarterback room with Jordan Love, still rehabbing a shoulder injury that he sustained against the Texans in the Packers preseason opener. Then the Packers also added a new cornerback after swapping Josh Jackson. He is sent off to the New York Giants, and in return, the Packers received Isaac Yiadom, who for the last 3 seasons kind of almost has had a similar experience in some ways to Josh Jackson, albeit he has been traded once. He was drafted by the Denver Broncos, spent 2 years with the Broncos, then was shipped off to the Giants at the start of the 2020 season. And with the Giants, he actually had a pretty significant role. He played about 16 games all season, so playing the entire season, not to mention he also started 10. What kind of role can Yiadom realistically play for the Packers in this defense going forward this season?
Well, special teams, for one. They've got a top 4, and I would even say a top 5 with Kavion Into that it's going to be hard for him to crack. So you're looking at 6, maybe 7. I don't think you look at Isaac Yiadom as a guy that is going to factor in on defense, especially early in the season. This was 2 talented corners, and you talked about that similar experience. They have the same agent, so drafted the same year. I think Yiadom was 3rd round, 97th overall. Jackson was 2nd round, 45th overall. So 2 day 2 picks that were drafted on day 2 because they were seen as having talent coming into the NFL, leaving college, and just I know Isaac Yiadom has he balked at this term today, but really neither has panned out the way that you would expect from a 2nd and 3rd round pick. Isaac Yiadom and now Josh Jackson have been around the NFL, not what you're thinking on a rookie contract when you spend a day 2 pick. So 2 guys that needed fresh starts, they'll get those in New York and in Green Bay, and we'll see what they're able to do. But Olivia, speaking of familiar faces and new names, we'd be remiss if we didn't say, it's a big day for me, Olivia. I think for the first time in my 8 seasons now covering this team and this quarterback, I actually knew something that Aaron Rodgers did not know. I've never felt this way before. It's big for my self-confidence. Aaron Rodgers had no idea, apparently, that James Morgan was from a Schwaben High. Green Bay native James Morgan, the Jets' backup quarterback, was from a Schwaben High. I almost fell in my chair when he said he didn't know. Like, Aaron Rodgers knows everything. He's omniscient until this one fact that James Morgan, who he spoke with today on the sidelines during special teams drills, the Jets quarterback, literally played high school football a mile down the road. He was genuinely surprised to learn that. I couldn't believe it.
Rodgers did know that Packers 2021 draft pick offensive lineman Cole Van Lanen is also from Green Bay and went to Bayport High School. So he knows a lot of things. He did not know this one fact, which was kind of mind-blowing as well.
How does that conversation go today on the side? Like, how did James Morgan, not tell him, yeah, man, it's cool to be back home, or like I grew up watching you because I lived 3 houses down. That's just, it's stunning to me. I was shocked.
Perhaps we can get some more intel as the week continues, and one more joint practice tomorrow, plus the game itself on Saturday. So stay tuned. We'll try to do some more digging for all of you. Let's head over to Facebook and YouTube for some of your questions now. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Let's start with, let's see, Wyatt. Wyatt wants to know, how did rookie cornerback Eric Stokes play in the preseason game? Didn't see him much, which is probably a good thing. I don't have the exact snaps and the count right in front of me, but how did Stokes look in a pretty brief preseason debut?
Yeah, he was fine. It's gotten more and more in my mind. I'm curious what you think, Olivia, that I started camp with Kevin King on NFI. I still believe there's no way Kevin King's not the starting. He's been the starter the last 4 years. He's going to be the starter. And I would still guess that Kevin King is probably going to get more snaps and probably be the starter. But he didn't take team reps today. Or he took a few team reps today. He didn't take a lot. And Eric Stokes got most of the starter reps today. It's getting more and more like Eric Stokes is going to not just get some serious playing time, but he might be the starter across from Jair Alexander. Are you seeing it the same way?
I don't want to speculate on injuries I don't know anything about, but I'm curious to know if King is being held out still due to injury, if they're being cautious with him, because he really, we saw the very first, I was standing down on the end where the Packers defense was going up against the Jets offense for the first 11-on-11 period, and King wasn't participating at all, not even participating with the second string defense. He wasn't participating with the first string or the second string. So in my mind, that would indicate to me that King isn't battling for a spot. He's simply being held out of these drills. So I wonder if that is going to have some implications down the road, if Stokes stays healthy and he's taking over King's starting role. Is Stokes just going to claim that? Is he going to slide right in there? Or will King be able to come back once he's healthy, if he is healthy, and start alongside Jair Alexander?
He didn't take no reps today, though. He was on the field. It was limited. He was on the field, though. And I want, Eric Stokes, watching him, I watched more of the offense than the defense today, but watching him briefly, Eric Stokes looked like he was not covering Devontae Adams today. That was probably helpful for him because, let's face it, you cover 17. There's not a lot of guys in this league like that. It's kind of like swinging a bat with a big weight on it and then swinging the bat without the weight, right? And it's one of Eric Stokes looked good today. He made I don't know the Jets players very well, but 84, he forced an incompletion against 84 today on a kind of a comeback route and was all over him and played the ball. And, the better he gets, the closer it gets. I just think that's going to be interesting. Jerry Gray said you don't lose your spot because of injury. What if a guy earns it, takes advantage of the opportunity? I still would think Kevin King's going to get more snaps and be the starter, but I think it is getting closer.
These are all good questions. Hopefully we'll get some more clarification on what King is dealing with in the coming days, and we can learn a little bit more about the saga that is happening right now as the battle continues for the starting cornerback role. Thank you, Wyatt, for your question. Let's go over to Matthew on Facebook. Matthew, first of all, has some nice well wishes for me. Says that they're happy to have me back. Matthew,
me too, Matthew.
To be back. I appreciate that. See, if you send me compliments, I will then take your question. You see how that works, people.
You unlock the key.
Matthew wants to know what's the latest on signing outside linebacker Clay Matthews. So this is, again, you talk about sagas, right? So Aaron Rodgers, left tackle David Bakhtiari, wide receiver Randall Cobb, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago or so, all took to Instagram stories to post about wanting general manager Brian Gutekunst to bring back outside linebacker Clay Matthews to the team. After Gutekunst signed Cobb, hey, anything's possible at this point. Right? Wrong. No, it's not happening is the bottom line. Gutekunst was asked about it earlier this week, and he said that Rodgers never came to him about it. Rodgers was also asked about it today, and he pretty much said that there was no attempt to make it actually come to fruition, and he doesn't even know if Matthews is interested in returning to the NFL. It sounds like he is living his life potentially as a farmer. Not sure how credible, if that is an inside joke or if that is reality, but these are all big questions, Ryan. Are we going to continue to have these conversations about former Packers that were close with Aaron Rodgers, the potential that they might come back to the team as the season continues?
Yes, because Aaron Rodgers literally signed a receiver that the GM would not have signed because he's friends with Randall Cobb. That happened. So now you have to. And look, I asked Aaron Rodgers today about Clay Matthews and the Instagram thing, but as part of a two-part question, I think that the first part of that question is actually more significant, especially from a newsy standpoint. And that first part of the question was to basically define the level of involvement that he is seeking on personnel matters or matters that are related to his job at quarterback, as he said in his opening presser, really in lieu of what General Manager Brian Gutekunst told SI earlier this month, which was himself asking, how do you define input? Is it enough to be listened to? Do you actually expect your suggestions to be put into action? So I asked Aaron Rodgers that today, and he seemed to set the expectation that he wants to be part of the conversation and that he knows that, in his words, what he thinks is not always best. I thought that was a big admission. Now we'll see, in private, behind closed doors, that could be different. But publicly, he said that he knows he's not always right. It's difficult at times for anyone to admit that. And he said that, it's great. The most important thing is having the conversation. He wants to be part of that conversation. He wants to be aware of the conversation first, but then a part of the conversation. And then if he's able to have the opportunity, like a handful of other people in the building, to sway a decision or to affect some change or some decision-making on personnel, he'd like that too, but having the conversation is what he said is what he meant, how he defines input and involvement.
The short answer, Matthew, is that no Clay Matthews. However, we'll continue to have these conversations. We'll see if Rodgers continues to lobby for some of his former teammates to come back to the Packers, and we'll talk about why that matters, because it does. Thank you for your question, though. Let's go over to Jim on Facebook. Jim asks if defensive lineman TJ Slayton is going to be an asset to the defense this year, especially against the run. Slayton got a lot of reps against the Texans this past weekend, taking 46 snaps. That was 61% of the defensive snaps. He finished with 3 tackles. If you look at someone as enormous as him, he's a big man up front. I'm sure defensive coordinator Joe Barry probably salivates at the idea of having someone with his body type up front and stuffing the run. That being said, how well will his style of play apply in reality to the Packers' defensive scheme?
He's a big body, biggest guy on the team. That helps. You want a space heater like that, right? So he is that. He's also shown some athleticism for his size in camp, and we'll see. Any rookie that's playing in the trenches and fighting in the trenches, it is an adjustment at this level. You're going against full-grown men, and it takes some time for a rookie to adjust to that. So understand that curve that TJ Slayton, any rookie defensive lineman is going to be going against, but he's a big dude, and he's got some athleticism as a big dude. So there's some tools there. You can see why he was drafted in the 5th round. He just got to obviously refine his technique and put those tools together, but there is some potential.
Jim has a second question that we can continue with here. He asks, how is the inside linebacker going? Inside linebacker battle going. Say that 3 times fast. I hesitate to even call it a battle because it seems like inside linebackers Chris Barnes and Devondre Campbell have solidified themselves as the starting 2. How likely is it that those are the 2 that the Packers are going to go with in base defense come week 1?
Very. I'd say likely to almost a certainty at this point, right? I think what's really interesting at inside linebacker is not their base, their starters, or even their nickel, but when they go to dime, who is going to be the dime backer? Because it could be Oren Burks. Maybe. It seems like Joe Barry wants to give him a look there, and he had a good preseason debut. However, Devondre Campbell has been kind of lauded for his his coverage ability. He's a really long, tall, lanky inside linebacker. Not this tree stump of a guy. He's a tall, rangy guy, and he's shown that in pass coverage. I wonder if at some point he'll be the dime backer. And just so you know, Olivia, I'm looking at these comments too. Chase, I appreciate you, but no, there's no amount of working out that I can possibly do to be a backup at any position, including inside linebacker.
I don't even see the comment. I'll have to. Oh, there we go.
Chase
loves to know, and that's true.
But me, I shout you out too. This is how it works.
It's true. Whatever position it would be, you would be the backup to me, right? It's not the other way around. Don't get it twisted.
Be a backup, right, Olivia? Oh, yeah, I'm always the backup to Olivia. I can't even kick either, so it's not even like I can be a backup punter or kicker. I'm unskilled.
That's okay. We'll be backup water people. We'll hand water bottles out. Thank you, Jim, for your question. Let's go over to Jerron on Facebook. Good to see you. Will the offensive line be a problem this year without signing key starters back? If you look at the offensive line, the Packers have had some pretty significant departures over the years, most recently being center Corey Linsley heading off to the Los Angeles Chargers. Now the Packers have drafted his replacement, essentially, in Josh Myers, and he appears to be the solid starter at the position. That being said, what kind of transition is there going to be for Josh Myers as he gets used to Ohio State versus the NFL this year?
Well, he's had a really good offseason, culminating in a really good camp. Aaron Rodgers gave him a bit of a butt kicking today, verbally. And it was, at first, you kind of wondered if he was teasing because he's had this running joke about how much nicer he's been to Josh Myers than Corey Linsley as a rookie. But it became pretty clear he wasn't teasing. This is the first time Josh Myers has ever in his NFL career gone up against a different jersey, other than, the preseason opener. But still, this is the first time he's been with Rodgers going up against a different jersey, and it showed. I mean, Rodgers gave a new perspective today. If you add that to the fact that they clearly don't know what's going on with their starting guard situation right now. Today it was Royce Newman at right guard, John Runyon Jr. at left guard, almost extensively with the starters. Lucas Patrick was getting second-team center snaps. Lucas Patrick, starting right guard last year for 16 games, was getting second-team center snaps. Jake Hansen was kicked out to right guard on the second team. They have a lot of moving parts going on in their interior offensive line right now. Ben Braden was the second-team left guard, and you've seen him be first team at times. You've got four guys for two spots there, and it's almost a coin flip right now how that's going to play out. So you've got question mark at left and right guard, and you've got a rookie center that kind of got his butt kicked today, his first time going against another jersey with Aaron Rodgers on the field. It's going to be very interesting to see how the interior offensive line stabilizes in the next couple of weeks.
I'm also interested to see it. It could be a double-sided coin. It could be we might need like a die.
Rubik's
roll the dice. Yeah, exactly. Something like that to really visualize what this offensive line could look like come week one. There could be a lot of different combinations there.
And here's the thing. Eventually, some point this season, David Bakhtiari will be your left tackle. Elton Jenkins, a Pro Bowler, will be your left guard. Josh Myers will be your center. Right guard still very much in flux. I have no idea there. And right tackle will be Billy Turner. So it will at some, but yeah, early in the season, it's going to be a good guess. It's still a work in progress.
It's a good question. Thank you, Jerron, for your question. Let's take a question now from Dan. Dan wants to know if Randall Cobb can make an impact on the Packers this year as a free agent signing. He has been in the league for a while. He's played with the Packers, and he's done great things for the Packers. However, at this point in his career, is he capable of giving them a little bit more?
I think he'll be a really good leader in the locker room. Anything beyond that is really a bonus. And it kind of reminds me of when the Packers signed Mercedes Lewis as a really good leader in the locker room. And, Mercedes Lewis has got a role because he's a good run-blocking tight end even to this day. But not a guy that you're expecting to get thrown to a lot or have a huge role in the passing game, right? Randall Cobb's kind of the same way. I mean, Amari Rodgers looks more and more like he's going to be playing quite a bit early and often, and I don't think Randall Cobb's going to be much of a hindrance and getting in the way of Amari Rodgers there.
Thank you, Dan, for your question, and thank you all very much for joining us today. We love chatting with you, and we love chatting with you so much that we will be back tomorrow to continue to have these conversations as the Packers wrap up their second session of joint practices against the Jets and look ahead to Saturday's preseason game. For Ryan, I'm Olivia. We will see you next time.